August 2nd, 2016. 30-year-old Karina Vetrano was a passionate runner, someone who was always pushing herself to go further, and that day was no different. At around 5 p.m., she left her home to go for a run in the Spring Creek area, a part of East New York in Brooklyn. Spring Creek is a natural preserve, roughly 2 square miles, with dense overgrowth and tall weeds. It was just a few blocks from her home, where she lived with her family. She usually ran with her father, Phil, a former firefighter, but that day he stayed home because of a back injury. Phil was worried about her running there alone because of how isolated the area was, and he told her he didn't think it was a good idea. She told him not to worry, that she would be fine. Just moments before heading out, she took a selfie with her mother, Kathy, who happened to be walking in the background, and then she left. Phil later said that about 45 minutes after she walked out the door, he suddenly had this overwhelming feeling that something wasn't right. 2 hours had already passed. Karina did not return home. Phil tried calling her multiple times, but she didn't answer. He reached out to a childhood friend who was working at the New York City Police Department at the time. A patrol car was dispatched to the area, and when the officers couldn't find her, the search was expanded. Units from the 106th precinct were brought in, combing through brush as tall as 10 feet. The search continued into the evening, as we combed the trail and surveyed the area. There was a sense of anxiety, said the detective. New York Police Department's Barry Brown. Someone even said out loud, "This is bad, it smells." Phil also assisted the police in the search, using geolocation signals from her phones. Investigators reached a marshy area about 15 feet from the running trail. Residents had previously expressed concerns about the tall weeds in this area, which had long been considered a safety issue for the community. At 10:30 p.m., officers heard a man shouting and immediately ran in that direction. It was Phil. He had found the body of his daughter lying face down on the ground. Police had to physically pull him away because he couldn't let her go. He kept repeating over and over that he needed to take her home. Detectives, including Barry Brown and Lieutenant John Russo, determined that Karina had bruises on her face and multiple injuries. Her teeth had been knocked out and there were abrasions on her legs. Her athletic top and shorts had been pulled down. Police said there was evidence pointing to sexual assault. Karina fought so desperately during the attack that she bit her killer with such force that she actually broke her own teeth. Investigators also noted that there was grass clutched tightly in one of her hands, suggesting she may have been dragged. Chief of Detectives Boyce said it was clear she put up a fierce fight all the way to the very end. The medical examiner ruled her death a homicide caused by strangulation. As the attacker choked her, he pressed his hand so hard against her neck that police could see the imprint of his hand. Phil said he feels like she wanted him to be the one to find her. "She led me to her. She wanted her dad to find her. I have no doubt about that," he said.
It's one of the most intense and difficult crime scene searches in recent years. The view from Chopper 2 shows the demanding scope of the task.
We have a very active crime scene in a very remote area. So we're searching this as best we can in a very tough condition. The grass is very high. We're using machetes to search for additional evidence wherever we go.
Thursday, dozens of detectives fanned across Howard Beach, interviewing landscapers and home improvement workers.
They're just asking us what time we shut up and were you working Tuesday? They want this guy, whoever he is. I hope they get him.
Tonight, teams of search crews continue to tackle the dense weeds 300 feet at a time. First, hacking away by hand with machetes. They don't want to damage any possible clues as they clear the area.
We're clearing a very vast area in the back adjacent to the crime scene, and we're conducting a search for evidence.
The mother and father are just visibly shaken. They want closure. They want justice. They want to be able to bury their daughter with dignity.
We all jog and we all walk out here and enjoy, the serenity. And now I'm afraid to go out.
At his latest briefing, the chief of detectives calling this case, quote, a severe community threat and taking the following steps. A 6-month review of all Parks Police activity in the area, collecting information from the police department's sex offender monitoring unit, and continuing with their cell phone tower investigation. But so far, just the possibility that the killer may not have been someone Karina Vetrano knew, well, it certainly leaves residents on edge.
My concerns is that, if it's somebody that lives in the area, that he might do it again.
Karina Vetrano, her father, described her as vibrant and successful, everything parents could ever hope for. She stood just 4 feet 11 inches tall, but her personality was far bigger than you'd ever expect. she was incredibly smart, held a master's degree from Johns University, and while still living at home, she worked as a speech therapist in Manhattan, helping children with disabilities. According to her friend Erica, Karina was a real spark of life, with a contagious laugh that filled the whole room. In addition to working as a speech therapist, she also had a side job as a promoter at a club in Astoria, where she invited guests and earned a percentage from VIP services. Friends told investigators about a man named Paul and her colleague from the nightclub where Karina worked. They said that Paul made unwanted advances toward her and became aggressive when she rejected him. He allegedly even stalked her. Later, the police ruled him out as a suspect after establishing that he was at work at the time of the murder. The longer the investigation went on, the more it looked like a random killing committed by a stranger.
We are still in the process of crime scene collecting evidence right now. We will be out there for several days. That is a remote area. We have crime scenes set up there, and we plan to chop down just about every weed in that location until we satisfied that we got all the evidence. Now, we have a lot of forensic evidence acquired so far, but we're not getting a lot of Crime Stopper tips. We have 3, and they're all pretty generic. So we have since raised the reward up for $10,000 for any information. That is a very strong community. I'll be out there as soon as I leave here. We've got nothing but support from everybody out there. We hope to have more information. Now, this is a remote area. Young lady was running, still daylight, so hoping somebody saw something going into the park. Thus far, we don't have a lot of leads on this right now, but we're still collecting evidence. The evidence that we've collected thus far is in the Office of Chief Medical Examiner. We're hoping to get it up on a DNA profile in the next couple of days. We have them, I tell you, we have them often in this city. No one is this subject of murder. They're usually late at night. If we have them on the street, rape 1, where stranger rapes are down in this city. Nonetheless, we still get them. This type of incident where you have a jogger in a park, in a recreational center, in daylight hours is extraordinarily unusual.
August 6, 2016. Around 400 people attended Karina Vetrano's funeral, including many members of the New York City Fire Department.
She was a beautiful girl, young. I didn't know her at all, but it's sad.
I'm going to address the coward.
Whoever killed her daughter, Karina. For the first time since the brutal murder, the Vetranos spoke with reporters outside of their home.
You know that my daughter was a force to be reckoned with. And I guarantee you that you will be reckoning with that force, not only for the rest of your pathetic life, but for the rest of eternity as you burn in hell. My daughter was a big believer of karma. And as you could see, she's magical. The whole world knows she's magical. And I guarantee you, you will pay forever.
Justice will be served, okay? That's why we have the PD. That's why we have God. Justice will be served.
Investigators were unable to obtain DNA from the sexual assault kit, but they were able to build a DNA profile using material found under Karina's fingernails and on her cell phone, which was discovered just a few feet from her body. Her murder shook the tight-knit community, and many people were left living in fear, searching for answers. Thousands also contributed to a reward fund for information that could help identify her killer. Police put up $25,000, the mayor's office added another $10,000, and the rest was raised through GoFundMe.
They're tracking everything down. But what we need for someone to say, hello, I know the guy. That's what we're looking for. If I wake up and there's nothing for me to do, that's when the bottom's going to drop out. So I have to stay involved every day in every way. Today it's this. This is keeping me alive today.
A tractor with an industrial mower was brought to the crime scene, along with dozens of officers from multiple police units. Because the land where her body was found was federally owned, the NYPD reached out to the FBI for assistance. Federal agents supported the investigation, providing additional resources, including the use of drones to survey the area. Police said they checked a homeless encampment located more than a mile from the scene, but determined it was not connected to the murder. They also questioned registered sex offenders living nearby, as well as several individuals known to be staying within the park itself. To expand the resources dedicated to the case, the NYPD formed a special task force made up of 2 detectives from each of the 8 Queens South units. Safety concerns in the park also needed to be addressed. A federal officer noted that the large area where Karina was killed was only monitored along the perimeter and at irregular intervals throughout the day. The same officers were responsible for patrolling both the Brooklyn and Queens sections of Gateway National Park, which includes Spring Creek. "This is something we've discussed with the community before, and it's no secret," said the commanding officer of the U.S. Park Police. Investigators said that without eyewitnesses, their strongest lead was the DNA profile. It had already been entered into the national database, but so far there had been no match. "The database we use for DNA was only created in 1998, so this person could have been in prison before that," said Chief of Detectives Boyce. He also added that it could just as easily be someone younger who had never been incarcerated at all. In cases like this, it's important to look at whether anything similar has happened before. Early in the investigation, detectives in New York said they had been contacted by Massachusetts State Police to determine whether there was any connection between Karina's murder and the killing of Vanessa Marcotte, a 27-year-old Google account manager who was found dead in Princeton on August 7th. At the time, she was living in New York City but had traveled to Princeton to visit her mother. On the 7th, she went out for a run and never returned home. Her body was later found in a wooded area about half a mile from her mother's house. The New York authorities stated that they could not confirm any connection between these 2 cases, but emphasized that they would continue to investigate all possible leads. The chief, Detective Boyce, said that investigators still believe Karina's murder was a random act. Their version remained unchanged. The suspect escaped through dense thickets and emerged in the Belt Parkway area. The police checked all possible escape routes, but were unable to identify the suspect on surveillance footage. Every house near the park was checked and questioned. The phrase "a needle in a haystack" was often heard, and it seemed that was exactly the case. When the case gained widespread publicity, one of the Verizon employees who was working at Spring Creek Park on Karina's shift contacted the police. He reported that he had seen a man who seemed suspicious to him. The man was wearing a woolen jacket and matched the time frame established by the investigation. A composite sketch was created and released to the public on August 31st.
At a press conference, Chief Boyce says one particular thing stands out.
And if you'll notice the dark wool hat, remember the day was August 2nd. A little unusual he's wearing a wool hat in the area there.
And now a laser-sharp focus on this bike path where, unfortunately, there are no cameras. And finding this man, who police say is black, 5'10", between 35 and 45 years old, with a medium build.
We have to speak to this person, so that's the only reason we're putting it out.
After the composite sketch was released, a former NYPD supervisor reached out to Robert Boyce. At the time, he was working as a security director in a residential building in Brooklyn, and he reported that one of the tenants looked similar to the image. Police went to the apartment where the man, Kevin, was living, but he initially refused to open the door. Officers stayed outside the building until he eventually came out. Kevin admitted there was some resemblance between him and the sketch, and he was taken to the precinct for questioning, where he refused to provide a DNA sample. Detective Brown said that immediately raised concern among everyone in the room. Later, police obtained a DNA sample from a discarded water bottle, but testing showed that Kevin's DNA did not match the profile connected to the crime scene. Once that lead was ruled out, investigators were essentially back to square one. In an effort to generate new leads, the program Crime Watch Daily released surveillance footage showing Karina just hours before the murder. The video was recorded during what police described as her normal running routine, and both her family and investigators hoped it might help uncover a clue. Authorities said it was the last known image of Karina. Her loved ones also walked part of her final route together. When the DNA failed to produce a match in the database, Phil urged investigators to use a method known as familial searching to see whether any relatives of the killer might be in the system. "You can find the killer," he said. "You can find a direct connection. It would significantly narrow the search." That method had already been used in 9 states, but not in New York, and Phil launched a petition to try to change that.
Familial DNA searching goes deeper, using special software to look for a similar, not exact match, indicating the suspect could be related to someone in the system.
There's untold amount of cold cases that'll be solved by this.
But the ACLU is pushing back, saying that such policy could lead to, quote, miscarriages of justice.
Well, I think they're just ignorant of the facts that we are just targeting criminals.
February 4th, 2017.
6 months after she was found dead, police now have a person of interest in the case of murdered jogger Karina Vetrano.
One man was taken into custody. The next day he was processed and he said, "Tell my mother that I'm sorry. Can I talk to someone from the family of the victim? I'm sorry for what I did." These events began to unfold a month earlier after weeks and months had brought no significant progress. The investigation was reviewed in January 2017 by Lieutenant John Russo, one of those who was at the scene when Karina was found. He also lived in Howard Beach. While reviewing the case, Russo recalled an incident from May 2016, a few months before Karina's murder, which he believed might be connected to the investigation. Russo said that the man seemed to be looking around the houses nearby, so he contacted the police. But by the time the officers arrived, he was already gone. The next day, neighbors reported similar suspicious behavior. A man in a black and white tracksuit was seen entering the yards of several residents. Later, Russo crossed paths with the man again and asked for his name. It was Chanel Lewis. At the time, Russo figured that was the end of it, that their paths would never cross again. But in January, Russo came back to the case with a gut feeling that there was something there. He started digging deeper into Chanel Lewis and discovered that, although he had no criminal record, he had received several summonses on the Brooklyn side of Spring Creek Park, across from the Preserve area in Queens. After that, Russo reached out to Chief of Detectives Boyce. There was something in Lieutenant John Russo's voice that made me think this could be it. We jumped on it right away. During conversations with Chanel, he told officers he knew the area well, explaining that he was a loner, had very few friends, and often walked the trails to listen to music and clear his head. While cooperating with investigators, he voluntarily provided a DNA sample. Officers also visited his former school and learned that his past had been troubled and complicated. According to media reports, back in school he once told a teacher's assistant that he wanted to kill his female classmates. "I want to stab all the girls." This allegedly happened on May 17, 2011, when he was 15 years old. He also reportedly asked, "What would happen if I brought a knife to school?" According to sources, school administrators contacted police and he was taken into custody as an emotionally disturbed individual. He was transported to Kings County Hospital Center for evaluation and later released. The following month, school officials again contacted law enforcement after he allegedly insulted a female student and threatened her and her family. He was hospitalized again and later released. One tabloid reported that he had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but that claim was not independently confirmed and appears only in reporting by the New York Post. In September 2011, he was reportedly transferred to a private school for students with emotional and behavioral challenges. Former classmates said he was a loner and was often bullied. "He was constantly getting beaten up," one student said. "Even girls would make fun of him and hit him. He didn't have any friends." Another said he would sometimes try to fight back, but rarely. Someone who rode the school bus with him said he was frequently mocked because of his clothes and appearance. At the same time, several former students said they never knew him to be aggressive or out of control. "He always walked around school with his hood up," one said. The executive director of Martin de Porres Schools stated that Chanel graduated in August 2015, and during his time there were no reports of threats. Throughout his time at the school, there were no disciplinary records and no reports of him threatening other students, the statement said. Chanel's father defended his son, but also pointed investigators to an important detail. He told detectives that his son could not have committed the crime because the day after the murder, he took him to the hospital. There, Chanel was treated for an injured hand he claimed he got it during a fight. After checking local hospitals, detectives located the doctor who had examined him. According to Detective Barry Brown, the doctor said he had removed a foreign object from Chanel's hand. The DNA sample Chanel provided voluntarily was tested, and it matched the DNA from the scene of Karina's murder. The foreign object removed from his hand is now believed to have been a fragment of Karina's tooth, broken off when she bit him during the attack.
I'm Detective Deal. You're located at the 107 Precinct, 2nd floor, Detective Squad area. Today's date is February 5th, 2017. Time is approximately 10:33 a.m. And I'm activating the tape at this time.
Now that I've advised you of your rights, are you willing to answer questions? Okay. Yes? Okay. All right. All right. Chanel, why don't we start with, I think it was a Tuesday evening on August 2nd, 2016. Do you remember that date and that evening? Mm-hmm. All right. And where were you at that time?
I was in at the Gateway and Spring Creek Mall.
Okay, by Gateway and Spring Creek Mall?
Spring Creek Park.
Park?
Yeah.
All right. Were you inside the park?
Yeah.
Okay. And was anyone with you, or were you by yourself?
By myself.
All right. About what time did you get to the park?
About 5 o'clock.
And were you on a trail or you in the grass?
On the trail.
Okay. Now, while you were in the park, did something happen?
Yes.
What happened while you were in the park?
On the park, there was this girl jogging, and then one thing led to another because some other situation.
All right. Well, the girl that was jogging, was she by herself or with anybody else?
By herself.
And when you first saw her, where were you? Were you in the grass or were you on the trail?
On the trail.
All right. And were you moving or were you standing still?
Like I was moving, listening to music.
You were walking or jogging?
Walking.
Walking? And you were walking towards her?
I was walking towards and then side to side, and then one thing led to another.
You said as she got next to you, when she got next to you as she was running and you were walking, what happened then?
And then, because of a past situation, I got angry and then started hitting her and stuff like that.
Okay. Before you did, where did you hit her?
Like in the face and like in the mouth.
In the face and the mouth. Mm-hmm. Before you hit her, did you grab her or did you just hit her right away?
Kind of grabbed her first.
Grabbed her? And how did you grab her? What part of her body did you grab?
I started hitting her because of the incident that was going on earlier.
Right, but did you grab her before you started hitting her, or was the first thing you did was to hit her? What was the first thing you did?
I grabbed her.
Okay. And how did you grab her?
Like this.
Okay. With both hands?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what part of her body did you grab? Do you remember? Her shoulders, her waist, her neck? Do you remember?
Probably like around here.
Okay, around the shoulders. Did she say anything at all? No. Did she scream?
No, because her tooth broke.
I'm sorry? Her tooth broke? Right. Were you covering her mouth at all? No? Okay. How long would you say you were hitting her for? About how long in time? I mean,
the whole thing was like about 5 minutes.
5 minutes, all right. How far off the path would you say you dragged her into the grass? Like how many feet about?
Probably about 10.
Okay. What was the status of her clothing? How was her clothing?
Kind of like pulled off.
Pulled off?
Yeah.
Okay. What was pulled off?
Like her clothes.
Now, you said you did this because you had some anger, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can you tell me about that anger?
Because, I used to live in a different address than I currently live at now.
Right.
And then sometimes there's this man that comes around there. He play like loud music and carry a lot of friends around there. I didn't like it because I feel unsafe and uncomfortable. And I like my place private and peaceful. Usually I just...
No, I know, Chanel, I know that, like last night, you really didn't want to talk about this, right? Last night. But today, it was okay, you wanted to talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that you told Detective Brown you wanted to straighten your life out, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then Detective Brown said to wait until you came in the room to talk about it, that's right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you did, right?
Yes.
20-year-old Chanel Lewis was arrested and charged with second-degree murder.
Chanel! We were hiding out for 6 months. Come this way, look this way, look this way. Look this way. Look this way, right here, sir.
After his arrest, Karina's family turned to the public with the question of how to use the remaining funds collected through GoFundMe. "You all contributed, and you have the right to decide," Phil wrote on the fundraising page. Later, he reported that he had distributed nearly $300,000, including making a donation to Archbishop Mahler High School to establish a scholarship in Karina's name. Later, a grand jury indicted Chanel Lewis. Numerous charges, 13 counts, related to the murder and sexual assault of Karina Vetrano. He faced life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He pleaded not guilty.
Tonight, Lewis's relatives say it's not possible
To the family, I'm sorry for their loss, but they have the wrong person.
Richard Lewis is the suspect's father.
He's a wonderful young man. Wonderful young man.
My brother is a skinny, you saw him on the TV. He's a skinny guy who cannot kill such a strong girl because she's a strong person. He alone can never kill a person like that.
Today, I would like to thank all those who have reached out and give their support for me and my family. I love my son. I support my son. I raised my son to be a God-fearing man and to respect life. My son is friendly, God-fearing, and would not hurt anybody. My son has a mental health problem and needs help. He's not a criminal and need mental resources. Please respect my family privacy. Please respect my family privacy in this matter and allow my son to get help in due process.
Karina's family fought for a long time to push for the use of familial DNA searching, and in June 2017, the New York State Commission on Forensic Science approved the use of that method in cases involving murder, sexual assault, and certain other crimes. The decision came despite objections from civil rights advocates who argued that this kind of practice could pull law-abiding people into criminal investigations simply because of their family connections. By the time this decision was made, Chanel had already been arrested, so it didn't change anything in this particular case, but it could play an important role in future investigations. As mentioned earlier, investigators had looked into a possible connection between the murders of Karina Vetrano and Vanessa Marcotte. It was later determined that the cases were not related. On April 15, 2017, authorities announced the arrest of 31-year-old Angelo Colon Ortiz after DNA evidence linked him to Vanessa's case. He later pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and unarmed robbery, and on November 2, 2022, he was sentenced to life in prison. He will not be eligible for parole until 2067, when he will be 81 years old. November 2018.
Courtroom filled with family and friends on both sides. As you mentioned, it was also very emotional. Karina Vetrano's mother was inside of that courtroom. She held onto a cross most of the time, crying. Karina Vetrano's accused killer, Chanel Lewis, obviously in the courtroom. His mother was there as well, and she held onto a Bible, also in tears most of the time. Now, opening statements got underway. Defense attorneys with the Legal Aid Society representing Lewis told jurors today Lewis is innocent. They have serious doubts about the evidence, adding there are no witnesses, and Lewis was coerced into confessing, and people are rushing.
They met by chance, Assistant District Attorney Brad Leventhal said in his opening statement. She didn't provoke him. He saw her and he killed her. Prosecutors argued that Chanel had no girlfriend, very few social connections, and no job, describing him as someone who often carried a lot of anger. They claimed that anger is what led to what they called a random attack on Karina. That day, he took out his anger on a beautiful young woman, a girl in a top, the prosecutor said. But the defense pushed back. There will be no eyewitness. No one is going to walk into this courtroom and say, "He did it." Attorney Jenny Chung told the jury, "They're trying to force a square peg into a round hole." She also questioned the interrogation of her client, which lasted more than 10 hours. Shortcuts were taken. The prosecution's evidence is incomplete, she said. The defense further argued that the DNA evidence linking Chanel to the crime scene was unreliable. Attorney Robert Moeller claimed the scene had been compromised by the presence of multiple people, including Karina's father, and therefore could not be considered fully reliable. His legal team also argued that the confession was obtained improperly and should not have been admitted as evidence in court. They said he confessed only because he wanted to leave after hours of questioning. But the prosecution focused on the content of his statements to police. He was angry and he took it out on Karina Vetrano. In his own words, "This is the man who strangled Karina Vetrano," the prosecutor said. The prosecution also emphasized what they described as strong DNA evidence. An expert witness testified that the DNA profile recovered from under her fingernails, from her neck, and from her cell phone matched Chanel's profile. 2 NYPD detectives also testified about the careful and detailed process of collecting evidence in the case. Some of the images shown during the hearings were so disturbing that Karina's parents struggled to sit through them at times. They broke down in tears, and at one point, they even had to leave the courtroom.
Closing arguments on the emotional trial over the death of 30-year-old Karina Vetrano have now wrapped up. The prosecution painting the suspect, 22-year-old Chanel Lewis, as a frustrated, angry, and lonely young man who spotted Vetrano on an after-work jog at a park in Howard Beach and took out all his anger by taking her life.
He was mad, and he took out his anger, and he took out his frustrations on Karina, grabbing her, throwing her to the ground, beating her, and strangling her until she was dead.
But the defense argued that it was the police department that was frustrated with their 6-month-long investigation that had yet to find a suspect, that Lewis was singled out, and that detectives worked endlessly to fit evidence they had to build a case against him.
They never allowed the evidence to develop a theory. Rather, they just wanted the evidence to fit their theory.
This difficult process lasted 7 days. It was time for the jury to make a decision. After a long day of deliberations, the jury, they spent over an hour reviewing the second of the defendant's 2 videotaped confessions. They also requested that 74 pages of testimony from the prosecution's DNA expert be read aloud again. In addition, the jury asked to review the autopsy photos of Karina once more. After a day and a half of deliberations, 5 jurors stated that they could not deliver a guilty verdict beyond a reasonable doubt, which led to a deadlock, a hung jury situation. The judge received a letter from the jurors stating that they could not reach an agreement despite all their efforts. After a whole day of deliberations, we are divided, and it seems we cannot make any further progress. We have exhausted all possibilities due to the lack of a unanimous decision. The court declared a mistrial.
The parents of Karina Vetrano looking somber and stunned leaving the courtroom. Relatives in tears after the judge declared a mistrial, a ruling which sent shock through the courtroom.
Mr. Vetrano.
Just a moment. Stunned silence from the family of Karina Vetrano moments after learning justice would be delayed.
Vetrano's family did not speak after the ruling. Lewis's legal team, however, did.
The jury is understanding that DNA is not all it, confession is not all it, and there are issues in the case that, as you all see, is much more complex.
Is this a win for you?
Well, it's not a conviction, so I guess that's a good thing, but closure would be a good thing too.
That decision meant the case would have to be retried, dragging the process out even further. For Karina's family and loved ones, it meant the pain didn't end. They would have to relive every detail all over again and go through another trial in search of justice. The prosecution didn't want to take any chances the second time around, so they introduced new evidence, including a detailed analysis of Chanel's internet search history before his arrest. Among those searches were queries about criminal charges, plea deals, how prosecutors work, and news related to Karina's murder. In March 2019, the retrial officially began.
Karina Vetrano's father returned to the stand today in the retrial of the man accused of strangling her back in 2016.
At one point, Vetrano's father dropped to his knees in front of the jurors as he emotionally described finding his daughter's stiff, cold body in a nearby trail.
The defense once again insisted on their client's innocence, arguing that the confession had been obtained under pressure. If he were the killer, his DNA would have been found all over the crime scene, they claimed. But the prosecution stood firm. His DNA matches, and the video shows him confessing to the murder. Just 1 day before jury deliberations were set to begin in the retrial, the defense received an anonymous letter, supposedly from an NYPD officer concerned about how the investigation had been handled. The letter raised several allegations about the early stages of the case. It claimed that during initial strategy meetings, NYPD Chief Michael Kemper repeatedly stated that police were looking for 2 stocky white men from Howard Beach. ABC News senior legal correspondent Sunny Hostin noted that if the letter were authentic and the claims were true, it could become grounds for an appeal. One of the defense attorneys said, "We have received troubling and credible information suggesting that police withheld critical evidence about other potential suspects, and that material was never shared with the defense." They also stated that police had approached Mr. Lewis for a DNA sample as part of a racially biased sweep, in which samples were collected from more than 360 African American men in Howard Beach and nearby areas of Brooklyn and Queens. In light of this new information, we plan to file a motion on Monday requesting a hearing regarding the suppression of exculpatory evidence, as well as a separate hearing on unconstitutional racial profiling during the investigation. In response, Sergeant Brendan Ryan said the NYPD conducted an extremely thorough investigation. And as demonstrated by the Queens District Attorney's prosecution, the evidence clearly proves that Chanel Lewis is responsible for her death. Multiple hearings and 2 trials over more than 2 years have already examined the issues raised in this last-minute anonymous letter, which contains false and inaccurate information. An assistant prosecutor added, "This anonymous letter contains no verified information." Its author's goal is to disrupt the trial. That same morning, the judge denied the defense's request for a hearing. The case was then handed over to the jury. The tension in that moment was intense. The first trial had ended in a deadlock and a mistrial. Neither side allowed themselves to feel confident. There was too much at stake, not just for the prosecution and the defense, but for Karina's family, who had already endured years of uncertainty. April 1st, 2019, the verdict was announced. Everyone held their breath.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
Chanel Lewis was found guilty.
A very different response this time around from Vetrano's parents leaving the courtroom.
God, tell us what's going through your mind right now. Mrs. Vetrano. Thank you. Keep moving on. Say it again. Thank you, Jesus. Sir, your thoughts?
Jubilation.
You're not allowed to interview.
Justice has been served.
I'm thanking those jurors for listening to the overwhelming evidence.
All the anger, all the years of pain, but mostly the anger was lifted, it was gone.
Lewis lifted his handcuffed hands in a farewell wave to his family and supporters as he was led off to jail. Some of those supporters today say they've followed the case very closely, and a family spokesperson says they question the verdict.
How does a young man walk into Howard Beach, murder a young lady that was physically fit, and walk out of Howard Beach without being seen on any camera from the Gateway Mall, any camera in Howard Beach at all?
After the guilty verdict was finally delivered, the case was once again thrown into question.
Now to a stunning development in the Karina Vetrano murder case. Sentencing for her convicted killer has been postponed because of new claims of juror misconduct.
For Karina's family, this was yet another blow and showed that even a verdict does not bring an immediate sense of closure. It was reported that one of the jurors accused 3 others of violating the court's instructions regarding when and how the case could be discussed. The judge agreed to postpone the trial in order to hold a separate hearing with the jurors. The district attorney responded defensively to the accusations, presenting a different version of events that took place in the deliberation room. In a written statement referenced by the prosecutor, Juror A claimed that Juror B had begun expressing their opinion about the case from the very beginning and continued to do so throughout the entire time. After the victim's parents testified on the second day of the trial, Prosecutor Brown noted that these words do not indicate bias but merely reflect an emotional reaction to the shocking details of the case. During deliberations, the jurors are required to rely solely on the evidence presented in court. According to the statement, some jurors discussed information that was not presented as evidence, and part of this information could have been unreliable. Juror D, for example, said that the absence of the defendant's DNA in the intimate samples could be explained by the fact that they might have absorbed male DNA. She said this directly to Juror A. "I know better, and you're just a man. I was raped." It was alleged that the juror unduly supplemented the evidence presented in court with her own personal experience to such an extent that the other jurors felt they could not contradict her and were forced to accept her words as the truth. That statement was viewed as misconduct by the juror because she had effectively acted as an unsworn expert on behalf of the prosecution. As a result, the jury was seen as having gone beyond the evidence that had been officially presented in court. This was argued by attorneys from the Legal Aid Society representing Chanel Robert Moeller, Julia L. Burke, and Jenny Chung. Juror D denied ever telling other jurors that she had been a victim of sexual assault. According to a written statement submitted by the prosecution, "I have never been raped, and I have never told anyone that I was. To my knowledge, no other juror made such a statement during deliberations." In another example outlined in the motion, defense attorneys said that one juror drew conclusions based on information that had not been introduced as evidence in the case. Juror C compared injuries from a separate rape case to those suffered by Karina Vetrano and stated that sexual assault had been proven because the injuries were similar in both cases. The motion argued that this kind of outside information introduced by Juror C amounted to misconduct since it brought in details that were never presented in court and went beyond a juror's ordinary experience, knowledge, and common sense. Juror C acknowledged referencing prior experience from another rape case, but said another juror immediately stopped him, and he did not continue discussing any details from that case. According to the juror's written statement, the district attorney stood by the jury's actions. No juror presented themselves as a professional expert. Instead, each relied on their own life experience and expressed personal opinions. That is not misconduct.
After the verdict, CBS 2 spoke to the jury foreman, who called it a slam dunk case. When asked what the most damning evidence was,
two things. The confession, it wasn't coerced. Dina was like so overwhelming.
He said the jury was unanimous on the murder charges, but there were at least 2 holdouts on the sex abuse charges.
However, in a separate interview after the verdict, another juror speaking on condition of anonymity said they felt pressured by other jurors to vote guilty. Later, the judge dismissed the allegations of juror misconduct. On April 23, 2019, sentencing was finally carried out.
With respect to murder in the first degree, the sentence of this court is that you spend the rest of your natural life in jail without any possibility of parole.
It's the moment the family of Karina Vetrano has been waiting more than 2.5 years for, giving passionate testimonies in the courtroom ahead of sentencing for Chanel Lewis, the man who will now serve life in prison for her death.
There were no more Merry Christmases, no more Happy New Years, no more happy birthdays. There is no more pleasure in life, no more smiles, no more happiness. Those are all taken by that convicted, murdering rapist. Only my faith in God and my belief in heaven keeps me from killing myself for fear of not being allowed into heaven to see my baby again.
Describing his family walking the earth as zombies, just waiting to see Karina, Phil Vetrano told 22-year-old Chanel Lewis his daughter had a message for him.
She told me that if you stand up here today in court and ask for her forgiveness, tell her you're sorry, she will forgive you. But remember, those are not my words, and I will never forgive you.
Her mother brought a piece of Karina into the courtroom.
These are Karina's shoes. These are the shoes that she put on the morning of August 2nd as she prepared to work and wore throughout the workday. As tiny as they are, Your Honor, these are the shoes of a giant, a valiant warrior, and a queen.
At times, you could see Lewis over her shoulder.
The vacant expression you show is merely a reflection of your detached and empty soul. You suffered and died 1,000,000 deaths every second of every day. You breathed, you ate, you searched your phone for pornography and forcible rape. But God was watching you all the time, Chanel Lewis.
The judge added an additional 32 years to the life sentence for second-degree murder and sexual assault. This is a situation where everyone loses. The worst nightmare for any parent is their child goes out for a run and never comes back. And you know what? Over time, everyone who followed this case will move on, but you'll be left alone. And when that day comes, you'll be in a cage.
The defense spoke on behalf of Lewis, and then he said just a few words.
I'm innocent. I'm sorry for the family's loss, but I didn't do this.
Chief Assistant District Attorney John Ryan said that the defendant in this case had not shown a single ounce of remorse for this horrific crime. I hope this sentence brings at least some sense of relief to the family, knowing that the person who took their loved one's life will never see freedom again. After the sentencing, his mother and other supporters gathered outside the courthouse. As the lead prosecutor walked toward his car, people shouted at him, "Shame on you," and "racists."
Minutes later, the lead prosecutor emerged in front of the protesters rather than taking an alternate route. And in further protest, they shut down Queens Boulevard for about 2 minutes.
No justice! No justice!
You saw 2 people arrested there. Some of the groups that they're involved with said they'll take their protests to Howard Beach in the upcoming days and weeks. Meanwhile, Chanel Lewis's legal team is already working on his appeal.
Those who believed in his innocence argued that the NYPD had been under intense pressure, they needed to find someone and close the case, and as a result, they focused on him. Around 40,000 people signed a petition calling for the case to be reviewed by a conviction integrity unit. Despite calls for his release and ongoing public questions, the legal outcome did not change. After 2 trials, 1 mistrial, years of attention, and extensive scrutiny, a jury found him guilty, and the court issued its final sentence. For the justice system, that marked the end of the case. In a case filled with complexity and controversy, the verdict brought a pause, if not a full stop, to a story that had kept a family, a community, and the public on edge for years. Karina Vetrano's family chose to make sure she would be remembered for more than the circumstances of her death. Through scholarships, memorials, and their continued fight for justice, they keep her name and her story alive in the community she loved.
So tragic and despicable. We have something good coming out of this. We have a scholarship.
Amid all the legal disputes, appeals, and public debate, one person was often pushed into the background: Karina Vetrano herself. It was her life, not the courtroom battles that followed her death, that remained the true center of this story. And in the end, this story always comes back to her. Karina Vetrano was a daughter, a friend, and a young woman building her future. She worked with children and lived with purpose, with plans, and with the steady rhythm of an ordinary life. On that normal summer evening, she left home to do something she had done countless times before. She went for a run, and she never came back. That simple yet devastating reality became the heart of this case. How an ordinary moment can turn irreversible, and how the loss of one life leaves an emptiness felt by a family, a community, and everyone who followed this story.
A memorial as beautiful as Karina Vetrano, tucked away in Spring Creek Park, where a butterfly made of stones, an angel, and candles sit. But perhaps the most important fixture of all, her father, who returns here every morning to remember his daughter.
It's the only place I could go to get peace. And it might seem strange because right where I'm sitting is where I found her. But I think because it's the only place where I have any control.
If she could be here today, or you could speak to her today, what would you say to her?
I speak to her every day. Every single day I speak to her. And she speaks to us in volumes.
Karina's father says her voice will always be heard, from the sound of the birds here to the writings on her blog. And they plan to find a way to get her work put into a book. How do you think Karina would want to be remembered?
Just as she is. Just as everybody sees her. She's special, she was smart, she was beautiful, and she was destined for greater things. And she has achieved that. We don't know what the rest of our life is going to be like. But it's a good feeling to know that